TikTok, it's time to rock, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in for a special episode of the 5150 show. As promised, I think it was about a month ago, we did part one with Jim and John. We're back here for part two. And gosh, if you take into account what we've got planned to talk about, I'm not sure we're going to get it all out, so there could be part three coming up. So never mind. It's my pleasure anyway to introduce on the top rung with me, Jim. How are you, brother? Good to see you.
Conks, how you doing, man?
And down there, and we literally mean down there too, because you are technically down there, aren't you? Somewhere. So
yeah.
We've got John. How are you, brother?
Good. How you guys doing?
Can I just say that I love that intro music? Like, is that an original piece of music from somebody?
That piece is, and also another piece of music that we've got given to us, donated to us by a guy called Luca. From Pretoria in South Africa. He's been on our channel a couple of times too, Jim.
That just makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Oh no, man, I like it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, rock and roll, brother. That's what it's all about. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So this is not my show, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Jim and John show. So later on, when we get a few more people into the chat, guys, we'll do a bit of a roll call. But we've got Kurt 5150 in the chat, we've got Nelson in the chat, and Eddie Van Hackett in the chat. So thank you guys for joining us.
Nelson,
Eddie Van Hackett. Nelson, he's a very good friend of the channel. So guys, what do you want to talk about first, Jim?
First, let's talk about that new David Lee Roth song, or the new stuff that he's doing, right? I like that he's okay. First, I like that there's a new take on these songs, right? I mean, is the singing great? Does it really need to be done? Nah. You know what I do think is cool is that Al Estrada, who I'm a big fan of, is playing guitar on these, and he's doing a fantastic job. Now, my take on these tunes, right? I don't know if people would agree with this. Is that like I remember like Dokken once, right? Like they have an album where they kind of redid all their songs, right? And people tend to do that when they don't own the rights to them, right? So let's say some TV show wanted like Alone Again, okay, a Dokken song, Alone Again, on it, right? Now Don, I don't know if he owns the originals or not, right? But if he doesn't, he can sell them this new version of Alone Again that he does have the rights to, right? And he gets all the money on it instead of like the record company, right? So I don't know if that's got something to do with, I mean, of course, Dave's got some say in these songs, but maybe, I don't know. I was telling this to my buddies and they didn't seem to agree. But maybe he's doing this to have another version of these songs out there that he might not have to deal with the Van Halen brothers. But then they are Van Halen songs, so he would have to deal with them, I think. I don't know the legalities of it, but it just kind of seems like it's a different version to maybe sell to people, or to sell, I mean, to like a TV show or a movie, if they want Panama, hey, it'd be a lot easier for you to take this version of Panama, give me 25,000 instead of having to go through some kind of litigation with a record company. I don't know. That's just an idea I had, the quality of it, it's not that great, but I think, what did he drop a couple, like last night? Ain't talking about, what was it? Ain't talking about love or something like that. Cause he did Panama and I think Ain't Talking About Love so far. And I was listening to it just to check it out. And like, I don't know if I'd ever listen to it again. I mean, I barely listen to the original, but it's just, I just don't know what the idea is behind, re-recording these. Now, if you're Al Estrada and you get to play on these Van Halen classics with Dave, oh my God, that's everybody's dream. You know what I mean? Conks, can you imagine Dave tips you, hey, let's go into the studio, let's do So This Is Love or something. Come on, that'd be great, right? If you're the guitar player.
It's a no-win though.
Oh yeah. In a sense, I mean, yeah, you can't, yeah, I know you can't. There's no way you can compare it to the original, but it's kind of cool to have in your back pocket, or maybe 80, when you're 80 years old, you listen to it. Hey man, I was in Dave's band. We did some Van Halen. It's kind of cool. I don't know. I dig it. I don't think John agrees. All right,
John, what's your opinion, bro? Give it to us, warts and all.
how the mighty have fallen. That's all I can say. I mean, first of all, if you're gonna do a cover like that, do something completely different. I didn't mind when he did the bluegrass stuff because it was just different. It's like, hey, try something else. But there's certain bands or certain songs you should just never touch. I don't care that Dave was in the band. It's just you're not gonna top that. It's like a Beatles song. It's like people doing covers of Led Zeppelin songs. It's just like you just can't do it, man. It's just like certain songs have to be left alone. Certain bands pretty much have to be left alone. And even though it is David Lee Roth, he's not the same David Lee Roth as he was 35 years ago, obviously. And it's just like, why are you doing this? I'd rather see him do some original song, with those John 5 things or something than this. But I don't know. I just think it's time to almost put it to bed. It's just like, if he wants to go carry on the Van Halen thing and do touring and sing them, I guess that's okay. But I don't know. It's just Eddie's gone. And to me, it's just like all of this stuff is just, don't damage the legacy of the band. And I feel like sometimes that's what's happening, I want to remember them when they were the mighty Van Halen on top of the world, and that's just that's how I want it to be, and I have to give them credit up until the end. The band with Eddie, Alex, and Wolfgang, they still could bring it. You know what I mean? They always could bring it, even to the very end, and they knew that, I think. But obviously, we know from a lot of the recent articles and things we've read that Dave wasn't speaking to Eddie at the end of the last tour at all, or at the beginning of the last tour at all, and barely speaking to Alex. So it's not like they could complain and say, "Hey, Dave, sing it like you did on the album. Sing the melodies like that. Why are you trying to sing an octave higher than your voice would ever allow you to do even 30 years ago? And now you're in your 60s trying to do this. It's like, what are you doing, man? And I really believe that that's why they could never release a proper live video of the last 2 or 3 tours. I mean, 2007 was probably the best out of them all vocally for him, but Eddie wasn't at his best then. And I just don't think they ever, 2015 would have been a perfect one because the set list was phenomenal. Everything was just great except for Roth. And, I'll go back. One last thing on this and then I'll give it back to you. But all of those 80s rock singers now cannot sing as high as they used to, obviously. Look at Sammy. Look at they tuned down. The only singer that should be able to sing the way he did in the 80s is David Lee Roth, because they were tuned down a half step, and the guy was a baritone. He was never a tenor. He lived in the basement. Dave was always like, he was different than all these other guys. That's what set him apart, because he wasn't trying to sing like, Don Dokken or Hagar or any of these people. He sang lower in baritone range, and he could still do that now if he tried that. You know what I mean? If you listen to those albums, but for some reason, he's trying to sing much higher out of his range, you know what I mean? And changing the melodies. And I really hold that against him, is that we never got a proper live concert video or anything from Van Halen at the end, because I think basically all of that stuff is really unusable, because everybody can go on YouTube and see if they went back into the studio and tried to fix his vocals. Everybody's going to point out, that's the show from here and Hollywood Bowl, and listen to the real version of it. This is what it sounded like that night. So where in the old days before YouTube, you could get away with that. Go into that Live Right Here Right Now Van Halen album, that was all overdubbed. That Japan concert, 89, that was all brought back in the studio and redone. All the vocals, everything was fixed everywhere. But we didn't know that because we didn't have YouTube at the time with the unedited footage, somebody on their cell phone. But I do hold that against Dave, because I don't think we get a proper live video of them because I think his vocals were so bad on all these tours, and there's nothing really usable. And that's all I have to say.
Well, didn't Eddie mention it in that email to that guy that was, they were discussing that, what was it that they had the idea of, which I don't think would have would have flown live. The idea of like playing songs and having the crowd sing them, because I don't even know how that would work. Like, hey, everybody, we're going to play like 5 songs that Dave doesn't want to sing, every night. Like, you would say that every night and throw Dave under the bus. How'd that work? I mean, I get it.
I think
I get that Ed was venting and stuff, it might not have been real. But like, I think what you were saying is that, I agree. And I think that's what Eddie was saying, that, they couldn't just go and say, hey, Dave, you're singing sucks. We got to do something about it,
Yeah, I mean,
but honestly, man, like, this is where, I love Conks, but this is where we disagree, right? I feel like you don't go to Van Halen to see perfect singing. Okay. I really feel that. You don't go, it's not like, if you want to see perfect singing, you go see Sting. Okay. You go see, I don't know, Phil Collins. Yeah. He sat in a chair, but he sounded pretty good. Okay. But I mean, like, those are singers. Dave is a front man. I mean, the thing is, Dave, and again, this is just my opinion. The thing is, Dave, like, he never sang. I mean, I've got bootlegs, the first tour, the second tour, Women and Children, Fair Warning. Like, I think Dave really only sang what you would consider kind of singing through the second tour. The rest was just like Bozy, whatever. And like, Michael Anthony's singing, some other stuff, right? But people didn't care then. This is just my theory, that people didn't care because Dave's like a good-looking dude. He's jumping off the risers. He's saying he's gonna fuck your girlfriend. You know what I mean? People dug that, right? But now Dave's old, okay, and maybe it doesn't and I can understand, people see it as maybe creepy or whatever. I don't know. It's because Dave's older, it doesn't translate as well. But it's not like his singing is any worse. He never used to sing. You know what I mean? It was never, you would never go. I wouldn't go. It's not like I would go to see a Van Halen show to hear Dave singing. You went there because it was like an event. It was a party, especially like, forget it, especially, the first, what was it, 78 to 84, the first, 6 years, it was just a party.
Look, Jim, I hear what you're saying, and I dig what you're saying, and I'm not going to contradict what you're saying, because, we all know the famous descriptive, isn't it? Van Halen were one of the premier party bands, and we know what that means and everything that comes with it, I think the interesting thing for me with this release is, and I always look at the Rolling Stones as an example when you look at some of these older guys who are performing. The Rolling Stones are doing that. They are performing because that's who they are. They're musicians, and Mick and Keith are going to die on stage. It's pretty clear. Mick's not singing anywhere near like he used to. He's rapping now because obviously he's, mid-70s. But we celebrate that, don't we? Generally, a lot of people celebrate the fact that the Rolling Stones are doing this, and they don't tend to get too much crap from people. But when Dave dropped that Panama thing, I think the problem I have as a Van Halen fan, guys, and shoot me if I'm wrong, I always have the recorded versions, Jim, to measure back to. You see, so
absolutely.
Yeah, so Panama, one of the greatest, you got Eddie flying next to you right now at the moment.
Well, I know, I love that. I love that.
On one of the greatest videos. Yes. And so for me, it's hard for me to get past that. And so I agree with what you're saying, but I'm also going to put a foot in what John's saying too. The guy's got to think about his legacy. He's got to think about his role in rock and roll history. He's got to be careful that he doesn't sabotage anything that he's already set in place, because, these songs aren't good, bro.
Well, that's what I said earlier. I don't know why they're being done. I mean, I'm not going to listen. if I'm going to listen to Panama, I'm going to listen to the original, you know? So that's why I feel like, I don't know, like there might be some kind of other reason, like maybe monetary or something, you know?
Gotta
Yeah.
be.
You would think there would have to be. There would have to be. But one last thing on that. I'm going to disagree with Jim. I love you, Jim. You know that. But I think the difference between Dave not singing in 1982 and the difference between Dave not singing now, it's just that Dave still sounded cool in 1982 when he did that. Now it's embarrassing because sometimes he literally squawks like, "Wah!" It's just like it's embarrassing. It's bad.
No, I see. I know what you mean.
I think that Alex and Eddie were acutely aware of their legacy. And that's why in that I think that article with that guy in Rolling Stone with that guy, the email guy, I thought it was I thought it was the best and the most honest Eddie Van Halen that we've gotten in this century. I think because he basically said that he wanted to do that kitchen sink thing and put it to bed. Van Halen was done. He was ready to move on. And he said it almost sounded like it would be a weight lifted off his back. It's like, we're going to just wrap it up, put a bow on it, put it to sleep. I'm going to go do movie stuff and work with some other people and do things like that. And he was looking forward to all that. And I just think that that albatross of Van Halen would be gone, you know what I mean, hanging over his head. And he was ready to put it to sleep because I think he realized that their legacy was being damaged on these tours, because I know a lot of people that I know that aren't hardcore Van Halen fans like we are, but they were like, oh my God, that was him. He was horrible. They sounded great, but he sounded hard. You know, it was like, and I think that they knew that it was just like, they couldn't really continue like this with, you know. So anyway, that's it. But if you listen to the like bootlegs back in '82 when he was just like not singing it, he still sounded cool, like the old David Lee Roth, like the, you know, the badass David Lee Roth.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. That, like, you know, I think that's what I'm trying. I know what you mean with like the new style of singing. It's like, it's not good. But like for me, like I said, I'm there. I'm there for the songs and like, yeah, singing is part of the song. Yeah, I mean, I understand that, but it's like, but that's not really why I'm there. Whereas, like, if I went to see Sting, you know, Conx and I, we love the Police and we love Sting. That's why I bring up Sting.
Sure.
And you know, if I went to, you know, I saw some video that John sent me last week of Sting doing some solo song. I forget what it was, and it was just amazing.
The soundtrack. It was the soundtrack, right? It was just
amazing. So I mean, so that's what I mean. Like, if that guy is a singer, right? Whereas Dave, I mean, he's like, I mean, Dave is like he was the prototype of the front man. I mean, every front man after Dave took that model, you know, maybe even to this day, you know.
Yeah, you know, he was this lion-maned, you know, rock star back in the early '80s, and now it's a vaudeville shtick act. Yeah. You know, that's what he's like, an old man doing a vaudeville thing, and it's just like, I don't know, it's just like, man, that guy used to be him. You know what I mean? The guy with the long hair.
Does, like, you know, it does bother me. Have you seen? I think you've seen these memes. Maybe both of you guys have seen that meme where it's like, what is it, Dr. Smith from Lost in Space? It's like, okay, yeah, that's right. I gotta see it. I wish I can't unsee that, you know?
Yeah. But to Jimmy's point, though, I understand if you're going to see a live show, the volume is so loud, it's a spectacle, and you're just getting, you know, your senses are getting just blasted. It's fun. It's still fun. Even with Roth, it was fun. But then the problem is if you go home and watch the bootleg or whatever on YouTube, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really sad and embarrassing. You know what I mean? So that's, you know, where, and even like his singing on the final studio album, I thought anytime he tries to sing that higher, you know, range, it's just, I know exactly when he started it too. When that song She's My Machine came out, that's when he started doing that. I remember him saying that he found another octave in his voice. I distinctly remember that. Go listen to She's My Machine. And that was the first song where he started doing, all that kind of crap, you know? That was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, this is not good. And then that's where and here we are.
Not early on She's My Machine. Oh boy, man.
I'm telling you, go listen to it later on and you'll be like, yeah, that was the first time.
I think I know what you mean, yeah.
When he started doing that scream that he does.
You got this comment here from Mikey Mojo, though, saying, guys, you know, other bands are doing it, though. Motley Crue, Kiss, Leopard, Bon Jovi, these guys' voices are all shot, but it's the show. I'd rather see my fave band on tour use tracks. Who cares? just sing along to it.
Yeah.
Look, I
get it.
get that too. I get that, but Jim's just kind of answered that, and John just now, haven't you, by saying, well, when you're at the gig, when you're at the concert, it's a different appreciation. Just like when you go and watch a sports event, you see a lot more of what's going on when you're watching a football match as opposed to seeing it on TV. Same thing with a gig.
Like when I saw him in 2015, I was like right there in front of Ed, and all I heard, and I think you can hear it in the videos that I shot. All I heard was guitar. It was just guitar.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, Dave singing? I guess, yeah, because I'm underneath the PA, right? So the amphitheater's hearing everything, but I'm underneath the PA. So I got Ed's cabs and right in front of me, like, I don't know, from here, like where my microwave is. And all I heard was guitar. That's all I heard. And it was freaking great, man. And that's why I wanted.
What really annoyed me, Jim? Here's what really annoyed me, because I thought his singing was just embarrassingly bad on 2015 tour. But when he came back and opened for Kiss, Dave reined it in a bit, and he sounded acceptably good. And if he had sang like that on the last Van Halen tour, we would have a live Van Halen DVD of their final tour, at the Hollywood Bowl right now. If he just reined it in and did what he did, like I said, not try to go over the top, just sang it more like the album, straightforward. We know he had canned background vocals. He had Eddie and Mike's voices, canned on the Kiss opening thing. But he didn't. He was in the zone there, in his vocal zone, where he didn't embarrass himself on that.
I agree. That was good.
It infuriated me even more because of that. Because I'm like, why didn't you do that 4 years ago? 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, anyway. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
So do you guys think that maybe Dave should have just sort of held back his stage routine a bit, because he's moving around, he's doing a lot of stuff, he's still dancing. If he just would it have been acceptable to the fans if he sort of kind of just stood there and kind of sang and concentrated on his vocal delivery a little bit more? That would have been more acceptable than him swinging that baton and trying to do his shakes and you know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's from like, going back to like, 78, 79. I mean, Dave was there, singing for the most part, but like, around like 84 is when he was bringing out the sticks, doing the karate stuff or whatever he was doing. And like people, I know my friends were like, okay, this is cool, but like, this is like 7 minutes. I could have heard another 2.5 songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like Van Halen fans like us that, if you're watching this, you're obviously a Van Halen fan. You know what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. At this point, you know what you're going to get. If like they had, let's say Eddie was alive, they were going to do a tour in like, 2023, you have some idea of what you're going to get. I would absolutely go. You know what I mean? Should he kind of like rein back the shtick? Yeah, I mean, sure. I don't think he was doing a lot of that in like 2015. At least I don't remember seeing a lot of that. Like to the extent of like 1984 or maybe even his solo stuff, like the first tour, Eat 'Em and Smile. There was a lot of stuff like that. You know what I mean? I think the 2007, 2012, 2015. I don't think he solo spotlight thing, but it was like with the acoustic guitar telling the story or whatever, and then going into Ice Cream Man. I love that. Sign me up for that all night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't think he was doing that lately. I don't think he was going too overboard on like the stupid stuff, like 84 or whatever, the sword stuff or whatever. But like I said, if you're a Van Halen fan, I think you know what you're going to get, walking into that room, and it's up to you if you want to go or not. And most likely people like like the gentleman said before, most likely you're going to go. You're a fan, so you're going to go. You know,
it just bothers me because of all of those singers from that era, he's the one who should still be able to pull it off because he's a baritone. None of that stuff was way, it was all tuned down half step, and he was a baritone. There's no way that he cannot hit most of those notes that he could hit that, back then. He should be able to hit those now. It's not like Zeppelin or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Good point. Great point.
So yeah. I do blame Dave for that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Duly noted.
Speaking of being Van Halen fans, so obviously everybody that's here watching with us, we've got 9 people watching. Thank you very much. If you guys are watching on replay, thank you. Let us know what you think about David Lee Roth's recent contributions in the comments. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Everybody's got an opinion. This is a good and safe place to voice your opinions on Van Halen. All we ask is that you just be respectful when you ask the questions or make your comments. That's all. So I'm going to ask John this question. John, a couple of weeks ago we had the tribute for Taylor, and a lot of other shows and other stars have made comments on social media about their opinions and thoughts, especially on what Wolfgang did on that gig. John, can you give us your thoughts and impressions, and then we'll ask Jim to share his, if that's okay.
Yeah, I thought it was a pleasant surprise. It never even crossed my mind that he might do some Van Halen songs. I thought he might jump on with the Foo Fighters and play drums on a song with them or something like that. That's what I thought he was going to do, and I think maybe a lot of people did. I wasn't sure that he would do one of his own songs, but I never thought he would do a Van Halen songs, anything like that. And then I never thought he'd play guitar and nail the solos and just the feel and the swing of those songs like his dad. It's just like it's genetic, and that was just amazing to watch. I'm looking forward to the LA version. I want to see if he does a couple different songs, maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe he does something different. And maybe there'll be maybe there'll be another surprise in LA. Who knows? You know, maybe Uncle Al shows up or Dave or somebody or who knows. But I think that would be awesome. But yeah, I just think it was perfectly executed by Wolfgang. I thought it was just really well done. And it also was a tip of the cap to his father. We don't know if there's going to be any kind of tribute to Eddie, but that was a nice tribute in that Taylor show to Eddie at the same time. And Wolfgang has pointed out anytime he's made a comment to Taylor and Pop, he would mention his father too in there. So I just think it was excellent. It was awesome, and very happy with that, and proud of the way he did it. It was really cool.
Oh, I agree 100% with John. I mean, I was at that. I was watching it, and then I had to go pick up my my nephew from school, and I was driving down there, and I had it on my phone, just listening to it. And when I was driving him back, that's when Wolfgang got on, and I was like, and my nephew, he knows Van Halen and stuff, and I told him that's Eddie's son, and I'll tell you, my mind was blown when he went into On Fire, and I was like, okay, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then, and the thing was, like, up until then, I was always wondering. I mean, we saw some clips of or a clip of Wolfgang kind of doing the ending of Eruption. You know what I mean? But like the ending, the tapping part is the easiest part of that song. The tough part is the beginning, up until the tough part of that song is up to that tapping, right? So I was, so in the back of my head, I was always wondering, like, can the kid play that? Because all we saw was the tapping stuff. So, I'm driving and I'm listening to, my mind's blown, like, that he can play this stuff, right? And this right before the solo, and I was thinking, I thought, was there somebody else on guitar? No, I don't think there was anybody else on guitar. But I thought maybe somebody else was going to take the solo, right? And because I was solo, and man, like I get goosebumps just thinking about how great it was. I mean, he killed it, right? And then the guy starts playing the beginning to Hot for Teacher. I'm like, oh boy, man. And he, like John said, played everything so great. That solo, it was just like his father playing it. It was, I mean, John was texting me at that time, but I couldn't text him back because I was driving my nephew. I mean, generally, if somebody else isn't in the car, I don't care, but it kind of worries them, right? So John was like, "Oh my God, are you guys seeing this?" And my mind was completely blown. I couldn't wait to get home so we could like talk about it. It was just amazing. The kid, I mean, there's no reason if there's gonna be, and other people have said this, but I mean, everybody's got like the same thoughts, that if there's gonna be a Van Halen, tribute show, I don't want to see another person playing Eddie's. Like, I'm not interested in seeing. I think we talked about this maybe in part one. I'm not interested in seeing like Satriani's take on. I mean, he's great, but I'm just not interested in seeing Satriani playing Van Halen or even Nuno or anybody. But that kid, I never thought he'd be able to do it, but he can do it. It was I was stunned, man. I was stunned. And I'm like, is he going to do the solo? And yeah, he ripped it. I mean, it was great. So yeah. I was stunned. I to this day, like I'll watch that, and it's got the same phrasing as his old man. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy good.
It's phenomenal.
That whole show, Wolfgang set aside. That whole show was so well done, and it would rival that Freddie Mercury tribute. Like, I thought it was so well done. Yeah. Some of those acts weren't really my cup of tea. Like, I'm not a big Stone Age, Queen of the Stone Age or whatever they're called, right? So but like some other, but like everybody was really good, and everybody brought their A game, and I'll tell you what, man, like the best thing that ever happened to Dave Grohl was Cobain dying. That guy, I mean, he plays, he writes great tunes. One song on drums,
great pop tunes.
Other song
great
on
pop
guitar,
tunes.
killing it. Next song, he's playing with like Chrissy Hine on bass, boom, 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 killing it. I mean, he did not only that, but organizing this whole thing.
In 6 hours, he was up there playing for 6 hours.
Yeah, and then he's introducing people and telling stories, and it was just I'm not a huge fan of the Foo Fighters, but I have brand new respect for that guy, man. He just did a fantastic job. He did a fantastic job organizing it and running it and playing on it. Like he played and that's what I like. That's why it's kind of like that Freddie Mercury thing, because if I remember correctly on that show, like Queen played all those songs and just had different singers or something, right? Or Slash would play with like Brian May on, I don't know, whatever, and Elton John would come out and sing. So, but the band was still Queen in a sense for at least for all of it, if not most of it, and that's what I liked. It was like there was always a tie to the Foo Fighters and indirectly Taylor. So
yeah, I think you're right, guys.
It was a very upbeat. It was a much happier event than I thought. You know what I mean? Just like little things like that little girl Nandy on the drums. I mean, I love that kid. She's just she has so much joy, and when she went out there and she just rocks. That kid. It's just like I thought. It just put me in a good mood. I was like, man, this is just great. You know what I mean? Music is just great, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. No, you guys are right. We were doing a show, and I think Brad and I were messaging, and Brad sent me a message saying, "Oh, have you seen it?" or something like this, and I hadn't, and because it would have been about now. Was it now or on a Friday? I can't remember when the actual concert was.
It was on Saturday.
Saturday. So yeah, so it would have been a Sunday for us, and I remember, like everything that you guys have said, and I'm not gonna repeat it. The smile on Wolfgang's face,
oh,
just said it all for me.
And everybody was like speculating, like, what's the kid gonna do? I like calling him kid. I mean, I know he's not a kid. And then I can't tell you like just the mind blowingest of when he ripped into those chords for On Fire. I'm like, he's doing On Fire. Okay, not like Panama or something, whatever. On Fire. And it was just, that's so
right.
Completely killed it, man. I was dumbfounded.
You know what's weird, Jim? You know what's weird? I never thought Wolfgang looked like Eddie. I always think he looks more like his mother.
Yeah.
But when he was up there playing those songs, like a couple times the facial expressions or something, I'm like, oh my God, it's Eddie Van Halen. It's like
what
it
you
was
said,
just
like
so reminiscent of his father. It was so weird.
And the thing is, like, with the Hot for Teacher solo, it's like, and it's a bit of a longer solo, and there's that part in the middle, like if you play, you kind of have to time it right, because there's that part in the middle where you stop for a few seconds, right? And then you wait for the drums to come in, and you do that build up, right? And he nailed all the notes, and the feeling and the phrasing. It was just so good, man. And that's what that's I think that's what I was getting at, 5 minutes ago, where like I don't want to see Satriani or Newton, like let the kid do it, man. He would never do it. I don't think he would ever do it, but that's the guy that would play guitar. I would go see that.
I would say that I would say.
If they announced Satriani or somebody, I probably would sit it out.
I agree.
I really don't have that much interest in seeing that. But
same here.
But if it was Wolf, man, he ripped it, man. And like, that's and like it's in his blood. That's it's blood. So let him take the place of his old man for like I want to see a show. I don't want to see a tour. Tour to me, and we talked about this in part 1, I think, is that tour to me kind of brings up money, and I don't like the whole money thing. I want to see a show. Let the kid do it for, I don't know, like 6 hours. Let him play some songs. I think he would do that, especially for his old man,
I agree.
Well, the only thing that might get him to do that would be a charity concert, maybe for a cancer society or something like that, where he would offer to do something like that. I think to do a Van Halen catalog. I don't think guys, in my opinion, shoot me down if I'm wrong, that he'd want to go on tour or do that just to rake in the coins for himself.
No, I don't see that.
But I think he'd be persuaded, wouldn't he, if it was going to go to some charity?
Yeah, I think if you do it for charity, you do it for you model it after just like this show, just like this last Taylor Hawkins show. You kind of, there's your blueprint, right? And the kid would absolutely do it for I think you're not asking him to do 3 months on the road. He's just gonna work out, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, 15 songs. He already knows 2 of them. You know what I mean? And those are hard. Those are not easy tunes, right? So I'm sure he'd pick up like something like "Feel Your Love Tonight" or whatever,
Yeah.
And I'm sure I want to think, I can't speak for the kid, but I would love to think that he would absolutely do that for like that 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
I would love to see that because it was like seeing Eddie again, man. Or at least your ears are seeing Eddie again. I'm like, whoa. I can't tell you how amazed I was by it, because like I said, I always had that thing. I'm like, can the kid play the harder sections of these solos? And oh my God, man, because we never really saw that. And it was amazing.
I agree. And guys in the chat, offer us your opinions on what you thought of Wolfgang's contribution and the continuation of that name Van Halen. Look, we got a couple of things, guys, that we discussed in the green room that we want to chat about. And John mentioned something when he came into the chat that he'd like to discuss with us and bring up, and I think it's a really important point. So, John, I'm going to ask you to, tell us what's bugging John.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess everybody's probably seen it now. That today in Pasadena they dedicated the Van Halen stage, with the plaque, and they had a big ceremony today. And not surprisingly, no representative from the band was there at all. Much like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame type of deal, you know what I mean? It's like we've come to kind of expect that now. But I think that was it was kind of lame. Somebody should have been there. David Lee Roth's sister. She lives in Pasadena, I'm sure still. And everybody said Dave was there last night. He went and showed up. Yeah, last night isn't today when the mayor is there. And
what's the point of last night? Like he went there by himself?
Yeah, maybe I said maybe he went to buy a dime bag or something like that last night. But it doesn't count to me. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, they're honoring you. Your city where you grew up has come full circle and back to Pasadena where it all began. And you could have at least shown, a little reverence for that and been thankful for what, the city has done, to acknowledge, the great accomplishments that the band had, you know what I mean? And I think it was awesome that they did that. And it's just a shame that they couldn't find anybody to pop over there for, just to be there and wave and shake hands with the mayor and things like that. Somebody from the camp, the family or something.
I agree. I became aware of this like maybe 3 hours before, we went on air. I just happened to see it. And, like peripherally, I was like, oh man, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, man. The Van Halen stage. I'm not sure what that means. It looks like a gazebo. Cool. There's like a Van Halen plaque, but it never, I just looked at the pictures. It never occurred to me. And John's 1000% right that like, I saw some people and there was like, it looked like the mayor was there, doing something. And it never occurred to me until, John brought it up. I'm like, that's so right, man. Like nobody was there from like the band and, but we're used to that in a sense, I guess. I don't know.
We are.
Doesn't make it any more right, but like it's just like the same, that's the MO. That's the Van Halen MO. I mean, we barely, I was listening to some podcast this morning, and it was Brad Talinsky talking about his book. It was a relatively newer interview, and he mentions, good or bad, they kind of talk about the same. I've seen like 3 or 4 of these, YouTube shows with Brad, and I watch them because you always hear something new. But like one of the talking points in all of them that I'd seen is that Ed, never looked back. Brad said something about how Eddie used to say that God gave you your eyes to look forward. Your eyes aren't in the back of your head looking back. But like I would love for these guys to look back and like release some of these. Release whatever is available, man. Like the fans want that, and so that's what I mean. I feel like tie it in with what like John was saying. I just feel like those guys, like like Alex, like he's got his own opinions and stuff, and maybe they thought it was cool, but not worthy, but like like. Cool, but that doesn't mean we have to be there. You know what I mean? Who knows? Who knows the story?
To your point, Jim, I think sooner than later they really need to look at whatever's on those shelves and do things like that because we're all getting older. The core Van Halen fans, the early ones are in their 60s now, and people move on with their lives and lose interest and things like that, and it's okay to look back now because the band is over. The most important guy, a lot of bands can get by. Charlie Watts died. Brian Jones died. The Stones still. Obviously Mick and Keith are still there, who probably are the 2 most important members of the Stones. But Eddie was the most important member of Van Halen. It's over. You can't. Even Wolfgang. You can't have him go out there and do tours or anything. It just isn't the same. Nobody's interested in that. At least I'm not. You're not. You guys aren't. But But all of this stuff that it's like, now's the time to do this. What you can't wait till people get older. Your fans are in their 60s, early 60s, maybe to their late 40s. That decade, that's where all your hardcore fans are. And you know what? People have kids and lives and are just moving on, and they lose interest in things. It's over, they're gone. But now, while it's still fresh, let's see some kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So start by putting out some remasters, or you know what I mean. Just start there. You don't have to do anything, Alex. You know what I mean? Other people can do that for you. Hire somebody to get in there and go get Don Landy. I mean, involved in it somehow.
You're gonna you'll make some money. Here, take my money. I please take it.
Exactly. You're talking generational wealth for their kids and stuff. It's like, Alex, for your kids, just, plus it's historical. There you go. It's a historical type of thing too. I mean, listen, there's hardcore fans out there. There's enough people that would buy Eddie playing the cello or Eddie playing the piano for, I would buy that out. Hey, I want to have it all. You know what I mean? I want to hear it all.
Yeah.
So, but that's sooner than later.
I want to say one thing, like with the whole going back to the Wolfgang thing. I don't think any of us is saying that like Wolfgang's going to replace Eddie in Van Halen. We don't. There's no way. I don't want to see Van Halen's done. I think we just mean that we want to see a one-off show with the kid doing it. I mean, if somebody's going to do it, the kid should be the number one choice.
Right. Yeah. Your point was
100%.
I love Nuno, but I don't want to see Nuno playing Eddie. I love Joe Satriani. I don't want to see. I have no interest in that. But if Wolfgang stepped in and they did one final show, I would be cool with that, because that's his son. You know what I mean? And just put it to bed after that. That would be it. I mean, but nobody can replace Eddie. It's done as far as we're concerned. It's over. So it's
I have a pretty. I'm not afraid to say my opinions right here, but I have an unpopular opinion that everybody is replaceable. Okay, sure. I feel like everybody's replaceable. Like Neil Peart, I love Rush, but if those guys want to go out and play Rush, so I'm not saying you write new Rush, because Neil Peart was way too involved in like the writing of new songs, right? But if you want to, if Geddy and Alex, just kind of like going back to the Taylor Hawkins thing with Geddy and Alex, right? They're playing some songs. Hey,
get Mike Portnoy.
Get a drummer. Life's short. You guys love each other. You want to get together. Get a drummer. Somebody can play that stuff, right?
Omar did a good job.
Huh?
Omar did a good job.
Yeah. If you want to tour, or maybe not call it Rush, maybe call it Geddy and Alex, and you sure play Rush songs. I'd go see it. But the only person that isn't replaceable in this universe is Eddie. Everybody else is replaceable. Okay. Now, would it be a success? No. Okay. But there's no way nobody can fill those shoes. I mean, like he was one of the, if not the main reason of people going to the shows. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah. Just going back to the Wolfgang thing, we weren't, bands can die. Bands don't need to live forever with like replacement guys or like, probably the best example of that is Foreigner. Like these guys, and I'm not knocking them. They've got the most successful model. I mean, they're playing, arenas, and it's a tribute band. Basically,
yeah. There's no original members in it. Mick Jones is not even touring with them.
And a lot of people are looking at that model and thinking, "Hey, you know what? We can do this." But like, and then like what? Like another band that comes to mind is like Quiet Riot. Like, so Dubrow had rights to that name. Then Dubrow died, and then Frankie Banali had rights to that name. Okay, so he went out there and was playing. And now Frankie Banali's wife has rights to that name, so she put together a band, and Rui Sarzo's in it and stuff to give it some credibility. But like, bands should be allowed to die. Like you can retire and not have some kind of like shadow band out there, like a fake No, the great going back to Foreigner, the model is fantastic because Mick Jones, he's just sitting home, all right, counting his money. Yeah, collecting checks. He's got these guys out there. He pays them whatever. That is trust me, that is a really admirable model, and everybody wants to do that, but not everybody can, man. And if you can't, you should just let it die.
Yeah. And they still sound like Foreigner. They still sound like Foreigner.
Yeah, they do. They sound good. Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm not knocking them. I think that's what I mean is like that's the most successful model of that, and people take notice that like what, maybe we can retire but still have a tribute band out there, fully sanctioned by the original band or whoever owns the name, and you sit home, you did your shows, you're in the band 30, 40 years. Now you've got, 4 or 5 other guys in there, and you pay them X amount and you make the difference just sitting home. It's great. It's a great model.
Jim, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons are going to reveal that plan
absolutely.
next year or two.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. When I was talking just now, that was running through my head.
Yeah, they've said it. They've said it.
I know.
Said there's no
That's
reason why
they stopped. Like in the 70s and 80s and 90s, they referred to themselves as Gene, Paul, Ace, Peter. Now they call themselves, Spaceman and Catman and the Demon and Star Child.
Yeah, you're right.
So they're trying to disassociate you from that name, from like the real people. Oh, they will absolutely do it.
Audition people that sound like them and that look like them a bit, and
you know what, that might work in like Vegas. You do a little residency, I don't know, somewhere, and like you have like the pyro, and you've got guys dressed up like them and sound like them. I mean, I'm not a huge Kiss fan. I mean, I love the history of Kiss, right? And I know the history. But I was never really a big Kiss fan. I know I've seen them. I know the songs, but I don't really sit home listening to Kiss. But I love the history, and I know that that's what they want to do, and they're going to do it. They just don't say that yet because they want to sell you this current farewell tour. And when that's done, they're gonna take a step back at some point and put all they really have to do is put 2 new guys in there. I've seen these. There's this Greek guy that does the best Gene Simmons. He's in some big, Kiss tribute band. That guy could, and like he's kind of sanctioned by the band. They know him or whatever. I don't know. Maybe he filled in for Gene when he was sick. I don't know. Maybe there was something like that. I forget. But the guy is fantastic. So like put guys in of that caliber, and like it would work. I think. No,
Jim,
I mean, and I'm not saying tour America, but like put it out in Vegas.
Hey, Jim, I heard that Greek guy doesn't spit blood; he spits feta cheese.
he spits tzatziki.
Yeah, tzatziki. Yeah.
Journey did the same thing too, didn't they? They auditioned for a lead singer and picked a guy up from the Philippines who looked like the original singer, and boy, sounds like him. So and took him on tour, and I think they did a couple of records too, didn't they, with the guys? So
he's still in the band. Yeah, I followed Neil Sean. He's still in the band. Yeah. And they're doing great. They're playing arenas. And that's the thing, right? Like it's favorable to one of the original guys because, like Jonathan Cain and we don't have to talk about Journey, but the point is that if you're an original guy, you just have to pay these guys like a salary.
That's it.
They don't get point. It's kind of like the guy in the Rolling Stones, the bass player, right? He wanted to become
Daryl salary.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. They're paying probably about $1 million, right?
Yeah.
But if he was in the band, he'd be making $1 billion.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's favorable to like an original guy for you to get a replacement dude, and then you just pay him, a salary, and you don't have to split points or whatever. Well,
the Stones did that with Ronnie Wood. Ronnie Wood was just a paid player for 10 years before they.
I'm surprised that they made Ronnie Wood like a full member. That's honorable.
Yeah. But no, I look, I
That's
get your
cool.
point, and you know that guy from the Philippines, I forget his name. He's a remarkable singer.
Arnell, I think. Arnell.
That's it. You know, clearly, guys, and hey, we don't have a problem with people making money. We don't have a problem with that. And you know, if you've got a talent and a skill, you know, go for it, bro. But clearly, he's doing better than anything he could have ever done in the Philippines.
It's true. And you know what? And I think Steve Perry kind of is cool with that too, right? He's like, I guess he knows that he can't sing that way anymore. Steve Perry,
he's not looking to be back.
He's not. He's doing his own thing. He can't sing that way. But he was one of the ones who was smart enough to know that, hey, I'm not going to embarrass myself. It's time for me to not do this anymore. Just like kind of like Robert Plant. I mean, I feel Robert Plant knew is like, you know, that 2007 concert that they did or whatever at the O2 or wherever it was.
Yep.
And I mean, that was great in its own way. But I think Robert Plant I don't hold any grudge against Robert Plant for pulling the plug. I think it was, you know, and not wanting to do it anymore. I know Paige wanted to, but it's just like, I think it was cool. And I actually like the stuff Robert Plant has done since then. And I'm like totally cool with this stuff that he's done, you know? Yeah. So, but that's me. Other people have different opinions, probably.
Yeah, that gig that he did at the when was it, 2008 or something like that? You know that, and you know that was good. You know, we ranked that DVD recently, guys, and it's a remarkable achievement for the band. You know, especially Jimmy Page. Watching Jimmy Page play, boy, it's just timeless watching the guy play. It's just. You know, he's just got grey hair, but he's still pouting that lip, and he's just.
I love that they did For Your Life.
Oh,
I couldn't believe it. That's my second favorite Zeppelin tune next to Achilles' Last Stand.
Oh.
So when they did For Your Life, I'm like, and then like he's got the Page moves. Oh, so cool, man. So cool. That was awesome. Yeah, and it was good to see like Jason Bonham back there representing his own name. You know?
Yeah. No, they did well, and it's a remarkable achievement. And the way they just even photographed it and filmed it, you know, with the thing behind the screen, it was just a great production of how to do something like that. So, guys, I'm going to fire the next question at you, Jim. You know, clearly we're Van Halen fans. We're hanging out for Van Halen merchandise. We're getting a couple of books. We've had a couple of books, I should say, that have been released. We've already mentioned Brad Talinsky and Chris Gill's book, especially. But, you know, there's one book in particular, and we've been lucky to have him on the channel here, and we interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, Steve Rosen's book. So I'd be keen to hear your impressions on this book, your thoughts and your expectations on the book. And John, if you could follow through with your thoughts too, I'd be keen to hear them.
Yeah, I mean, I ordered the book, and like we were talking in the green room before, I was, you know, I see people getting it, and I'm like, I can't wait for mine to come, right? And I really feel that, like, you know, nothing against these other books, and I have them, right? But I feel like the Steve Rosen one is really going to give us an insight because, you know, the Brad Talinsky, Chris Gill book, you know, it's like it's like a conversation, it's like an interview, right? Yep. But like, I feel like Steve's book is gonna be like the Eddie Van Halen tale or story of like what he knows and what he's been through with Eddie. And man, I am so looking forward to reading that. I this is the book that outside of maybe, you know, like Michael Anthony writing a book, I feel like this might give us the closest look into who that guy is, you know. And I would rather see some kind of like a book that tells the story. My only problem with like the, you know, Brad Talinsky book is that it's like, you know, it's like you're reading a magazine. It's like an interview. Brad says this. answering it. Cool. I mean, I've read the book, you know, but I feel like I think for me, I like that format where it's like, you know, where you've got somebody telling you like what happened and how he felt about it and how he feels like Eddie felt about it. Like he talks, you know, I've seen all the Steve Rosen, you know, podcasts, even yours, Andrew. I just finished it, I don't know, like last week. And I really think that's gonna, for me, you know, maybe not other people, but for me, I'm really looking forward. I wish he came today. And like 600 pages, I mean, that's insane. That's what I want. I want an in-depth. That's kind of like, you know, for me, it's almost like these documentaries, right? Like, you know, they'll do a documentary on, like, let's say whatever, X Band, Foo Fighters, right? And it'll be an hour and a half. But like in this day and age, give me everything. Make it 4 hours.
Yeah.
You know, tell me the whole story. You know, like I'll watch it. I'm not going to watch it in one sitting. Kind of like that. You know, like I really felt like the Eagles and Tom Petty have the best like story docs because
Right.
it's like 6 hours. Each one is like 6 hours, and they take you through everything. Right. That's what I want. And that's what I feel this book is like. He's going to take you through, I mean, not every part of, you know, Ed's life. I mean, he was only in it, you know, I don't know, 15, 20 years. You know, I guess they had a falling out at some point. I don't know, like 96 or maybe later. I don't even know. But so it's not like, you know, he only knows, he only can tell you the story up until X year, you know. But man, I'm really looking forward to that book. I really am.
Certainly the story right through the 80s, which is pretty
Oh
important.
yeah,
You know?
that's a sweet spot for me. The 80s and the 90s, you know. And I'm not gonna lie, I want to hear like what happened, like you know, with the falling out, like what happened.
Yeah.
You know. But I am really looking forward to that. I can't wait for that to come. I'm hoping it comes next week. Like I'm looking forward to it. You know. And when I saw, I just like, I don't know, 4 days ago, I saw like the first person, you know, I saw it on Facebook. The first person got it. I was like, this thing's shipping? All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Steve Rosen. I mean, that whole history with his interviews. I mean, you know, like I didn't even know who he was. I mean, I remember, you know, like we talked about in part one, how important these transcription, like Guitar World and Guitar for the Practicing Musician were, and like Steve was a big part of that, you know.
Yep.
And you know, just reading, you know, those interviews and stuff back then. And I know in your interview there, Andrew, you guys mentioned, and I thought this was a great point. You guys mentioned that famous Jimmy Page interview that he did, and like the guy is thorough. You know what I mean? So that's why. And you know what I loved about what I love about Steve is that, like, you know, he wanted to publish this book, you know, and, you know, through like a real publisher. And they were like, man, this book's too long. And like, he was like, I'm not going to cut this. I'm going to self-publish this. I love that. Like, that's what I mean. Like, tell me, don't cut out anything. Tell me your real story.
Yep.
You know, if it's 300 pages, great. If it's 700 pages, I'll read all of them, you know? Conch, you're up next.
Well, yeah, obviously this is, you know, Steve's life work. This is, you know, he's been waiting probably since 1985. I think when you know, he first wanted to write a biography on Ed, and I guess, you know, Ed didn't want to do one at that time, whatever. But I think, you know, Steve's been sitting on all this stuff for years and years and years, and he's finally going to get to, you know, to put it out there for everybody to, you know, read and, you know, and decide what they will about it. But, you know, and obviously it's going to give us a greater, you know, picture of the Eddie, who he was as a person, you know what I mean? Kind of like, you know, I got a lot of that from Chris and Brad's book too, is because it was in Eddie's own words, you know what I mean? And I'm sure this will be a lot of the same way. So, I mean, so it'll definitely have some historical value as far as that too, as far as, you know, what we know about Eddie, or what we will know, you know. Of course, the mid 80s, you know, that stuff is going to be real interesting to read. And you know, like Jim said, the falling out between them, I'd like to really, find out what happened there. You know what I mean? What went wrong there? Because, early on, I guess they were pretty tight too. So, so I think that's going to be pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't wait to get mine.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you guys. It's going to be a monument, and to be fair, when Steve was on our show, he said that there's a couple of things that he's mentioned in the book that might upset some people, but he had to, that was his legacy. He had to. He felt that it was important for him to put these in. So. And we've mentioned this before, guys. We're all friends with Keith Campbell. Keith Campbell's a very good friend of ours in the community, and he mentioned it to me in a private conversation we were having. He was saying, that as the real Van Halen fans might have to get out there and protect Steve because because people are going to take swipes at whatever he's saying in this book, and because of that. I haven't watched any unboxing videos, guys. I was watching one channel a couple of days ago and for about 30 seconds and stopped watching it because I don't want any impressions, Jim and John, about that book. I want to be able to get that book and unpack it and read it myself and then go back and watch and see what other people have to say about it. And it's no disrespect to anybody, and I don't want to hear any of those.
No, yeah, you just don't want a spoiler or something. You want to experience it.
Yeah. I don't want to hear through somebody on some podcast why they fell out. It's like the people that were standing there outside that Star Wars film, and people walked out and they said that Thingy kills his father. And this guy got beaten up or something by people.
Yeah.
Kylo Ren. That's right. Kylo Ren killed his father.
Killed.
And that's a true story apparently. So some people gave him a hiding.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting that, man. I can't wait. I'm gonna take like a week off, like in late October.
And
I'm hoping it gets here. It should, and just read.
Well, what I'd love to do with you guys, if it's okay, if we can pencil something, and after we've got our copies of our books and we've read it, I'd love to come back and just slot a show in with the three of you guys and just talk about our experiences, because clearly,
that'd be great, man.
Clearly, we're all excited for it, chomping at the bit for it. So in a couple of months' time, or three, we can come back and we can have right. So you've got 30 minutes, Jim.
I think it's good. Oh, I'd absolutely be up to that. I mean, please. Like I told you in the green room, if it's Van Halen, you can't shut me up. But I think it's great that of course, he has to kind of do this, but I feel like it's great that like internationally, like he's going to send these books out. Of course you have to pay for the shipping or whatever, but he's making this available to people outside of like the US and stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, of course you would kind of have to, but I just like the fact that like, if you want this book, you can get it. There's not some kind of, global restriction, or you have to be in, in America to get it. Or
you just have to pay for the freight, bro. That's the problem.
Which isn't cheap. Yes, it's not cheap.
Yeah. So I'm still paying for it. I slotted a few dollars every week away for it. But look, when it was announced that he was coming out with this book, everybody knew, as you said, Jim and John, he's speaking with authority. This guy, and we've mentioned this before, this guy's not some hack paid by some website somewhere to get clickbait and write an article about something. He's an insider, John. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, he definitely is. He was there.
He had that relationship with Ed, and in a way, you're kind of like, you kind of like put yourself in there, like, wouldn't it be cool if I had that, that relationship with Ed? Like, you would come over and jam and play my guitars or whatever. So, like, I feel like every Van Halen fan can like relate to that, because, that's like kind of like the dream in a sense. Like Eddie's your buddy, and he comes over, and you guys are cool, and you know, and so I'm interested in that, and again, like we said earlier, it takes care of like those like great years, from like you met him in '77, and like all and talked to them, was friends with them all through those iconic years.
There's
So
a
yeah,
question there in the chat from a very good friend of the channel, Robert Ramford, speaking or talking about expensive books. Have you guys seen, or have you got ordered Slaus's book?
Haven't got, I'm aware of Zlaz's book. I mean, I was hoping that Conklin would get it and like invite me over just for pictures. Hint, hint.
I have not gotten it.
Yeah, I haven't got, but no,
although I do like picture books. They're a lot easier to.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Really, Zlaz is Van Halen. I mean, you can't deny it. Zlaz is part of that history. Those iconic pictures, especially the one outside of like his. I think it was outside of his house with the Jeep, like on the sidewalk with Ed, like, on
Yep.
kind of like stretched out on the roof almost with like the roof off and like standing on it in a sense. I mean, it's like, you see, I mean, when I was a kid, that picture just blew my mind. Like, here's Eddie. He's like, first of all, he's like parked on the sidewalk, right? In this Jeep with these huge tires. And then like, the other thing that kind of like hit me was like, you kind of saw like, the houses and like somebody could just be walking down the street that day and there's this guy, there's a guy taking pictures of this dude in his Jeep, and like maybe they don't know who that guy is. It was just, I mean, Zlaz has taken the most iconic Van Halen pictures. That one, especially the one on the cover, man, what a great shot where Eddie's just standing there. I mean, come on, but no, I mean, honestly, I haven't. I wish somebody had it, and yeah, maybe I'll pick it up, but I haven't ordered it, but I would love to see it.
Let's just wait for the cheaper.
Wait for the paperback.
To come out. Yeah.
Somebody said, and I think this is true. Somebody said that book is all unreleased pictures. Like there aren't pictures that have been released before.
That's what I heard.
I mean, it might be from the same photo shoots, but it's like different pictures that have never been released, and I think that's like the selling point. So I kind of know a little bit about the book, and I'd love to see it.
I'm with you guys. I want to read the story. That's the pictures are good. That's great. And if the book was affordable, I'd probably get it. But 580 pages of insider juice, John and Jim. That's always going to be and he talks about the guitars. He spoke to us on the show, that he's very detailed and technical, and he's got the authority to talk about that. He's not just talking about a guitar or this guitar. He's in depth with the guitar he's talking about.
Yeah.
Which is going to drive you, me, and everybody who's a guitar player to degrees nuts and crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And like pictures. I mean, there's this. I'll go on Facebook and like you got to see my feed. My feed is basically guitars or Van Halen, right? And there's this guy. Scott Yeager. I don't know if you guys know him. He comes up with like the most insane. I don't know where he finds these. Every day there's some rare picture that I thought 2 years ago I thought I'd seen every picture. This guy comes up with pictures that nobody's ever seen. Rare stuff. I think his girlfriend at the time was somehow involved with Van Halen. Like she was a production assistant or I mean, he was on the set. He was on the set of Hot for Teacher, the video. You know what I mean? Anyway, so he comes up with so I kind of get like my picture. I get my picture fix kind of like met through like Facebook, whereas I that's why I kind of like I'm gravitating towards like the Steve Rosen book more. It's like that's like some details that are gonna blow your mind when you read them. It's almost like that. You know what? It's almost like that Noel Monk book. I tell people, man, read that Noel Monk book, but
Yes.
be prepared to have your opinion, changed about
Change
these guys.
100% at the end of it.
Yeah, you got to be. That's what happened to me. Like my opinion kind of changed about some of these guys.
Yeah.
Especially in regards to Michael Anthony, who was, the greatest dude.
Well, yeah,
but
when he discussed it, I don't want to give anything away in case anyone hasn't read that book, but when he said that Dave was just his arsehole when he didn't get his weed, it was just like, really? yeah, it was just, okay, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Anthony, he's got a good book in him. I don't know, and I had heard recently, I think he said that he was thinking about writing a book, but his book will never.
It won't be any dirt.
There will not be any major dirt, but you have to think that there was some kind of animosity there because he never picked up the phone and called Eddie, and Hagar knew the severity of Eddie's condition. And he called him, and Mike never picked up the phone to call him. So, I mean, you can read into that any way you like. I mean, there must have been something there. He said all the right things in the interviews with Hagar and stuff like that, but he didn't pick up the phone and say, "Hey, just want to clear the air." You know what I mean? I heard you're not well. I'm calling you. I'm thinking about you. And listen, man, we had a lot of good years together. We had some bad, obviously some bad, blood between us, but that never happened. He never called the phone and picked up the phone. So, I mean, you can read into that a lot of different ways. So, but I'm sure Mike has some pride too. And he's been kicked around a lot by a lot of things that were said about him, about his bass playing and about, listen, it's Van Halen. Eddie wrote the songs. They wrote the bass parts. They're not the most complicated bass part. They're not like Rush, Geddy Lee singing and playing them at the same time. That wasn't what this band was all about. They were pop rock songs with pumping eighth notes. Like that's obviously most bass players could play that. You know what I mean? But he brought a different element to it. He knew his place in that band. He wasn't trying, Billy Sheehan, I always say, do you honestly think Billy Sheehan would have lasted in that band more than like 6 months to a year? No, the egos would have clashed. Eddie had a big ego. He did. He seemed like a nice guy, but he had an ego too. And I just don't think he would have shared. I always point back to, they say the original, the Hot for Teacher, there was the tapping on the bass too. Eddie did that on the demo. But if you notice on the album, there was no tapping. And I guess he's like, you know what? I wrote all this stuff. I'm not sharing the spotlight with Michael Anthony on this great tapping thing here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Live. I'm the guitar hero. And, so I think almost that's why they cut it. You know what I mean? If you think about things like that. But I don't know. I just think that, that was pretty telling to me that Michael Anthony never reached out to him because, I think a lot of us knew that Eddie was ill, very ill. And, and I always wondered, like, when is this guy is he going to call or something? Come on. We all hear the story. We're hearing rumor. We heard, people telling us, yeah, he's very, very ill. He's very, very ill. And he never reached out. So I don't, and maybe Eddie would have reacted the same way that he did with, Sammy, apparently. He was put it aside, I guess, and maybe he would have done that with Mike. Of all people, Mike, because he was there more than Hagar and stuff like that, but longer than obviously.
I've got a question for you, John and Jim. So you know how Steve Rosen said in his book that he hopes that book would be a book that maybe Wolfgang would read, even though Wolfgang and the Van Halens never reached out to him. Would a biography that Michael, if he wrote something, would he consider putting the dirt in because he wanted to give the fuller story, or would he not put the dirt in because he didn't want Wolfgang and the Van Halens to be affected by a version of his history?
Yeah, I don't think he would put it in because of that. I think that one thing that can be said about him, like I said, maybe he did have pride and maybe he didn't pick up the phone because maybe he was like, well, screw you, man. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Maybe deep down he was like that with Ed, you know, maybe he felt like that. But at the same time, he's always been a protector of the legacy of that band. He was the one guy carrying that torch for that band. And I think that he takes pride in that, listen, I was part of this, one of the greatest rock bands of all time. And there's so
Only
much
4
bad
people,
stuff happening,
man.
so much stuff happened in this, the fighting, and it was just so dysfunctional. But I'm the guy that's going to talk about the amazing times and music we had, and that's my job, you know what I mean, to carry that. So I don't think he would talk about any dirt, even the way it went down between him and Eddie at the end. I don't think he would go into it and say how pissed off he might really be about it, and maybe, you got to figure, if somebody talks so much smack about you that, it's human, man. You gotta be like, screw you, man. I'm done with you. I moved on with my life. I'm happy playing with Hagar and doing this thing. That's over. It was a great time in my life, and I'll cherish it. And I'm gonna hold that high because that's, they were one of the greatest bands of all time. But I'm still a human being with feelings, and you know what? You guys really abused me for a lot of years. You know what I mean? So, that's it. He's done. You know what I mean? So that's how I don't know if we'll ever know how he really feels, but you could read into that, you know what I mean, by him not picking up the phone, It was kind of surprising.
I agree with John 1,000%. I don't think Mike would do like a tell all. Now there is going back to Steve Rosen. I'm sure you guys know this, but maybe some people don't. There's a great interview with Michael Anthony that was taken because in '84, Steve interviewed Dave, Michael. I think it was Dave. He definitely did Ed, and he definitely did Michael, right? And maybe Dave. But
I think so.
the Michael Anthony one is like the closest you will get. I was listening to it, poof, right? It was like it's the closest you will get to like a tell all. Now, again, this is only up to '84, but man, he is in that interview. You got to listen to. If you're a Van Halen fan, you got to hear this. He is not a fan of Dave's. He does not like Dave.
Correct.
Right. And this is '84. This isn't '86 where Dave's not in the band. This is '84. Right.
Correct.
So, but yeah, going back to like, I don't think Mike is class. Okay. I had some run-ins with Mike and he was total class, and he loves the fans. He will bend over backward for the fans. Right. And, I would love, he is the only person who I would believe out of all four of them. If all four of them wrote a book, the one that I would believe the most is Michael Anthony's, right? And that's why I want him to write a tell all, but I don't think he would ever do it. He might write a book,
Mm-hmm.
But now on the other hand is that these publishers, they're not going to publish a book that's not dirt.
That's the thing. You're right.
That's the thing. They're not going to publish. I forget who it was. Somebody wrote a book. Some rock star wrote a book and submitted it. I forget who it was. I think Eddie Trunk was telling this story. I listened to Trunk, and he submitted it, and they were like, "We can't use this. You got to go back and put in some dirt." And so, but that's Michael Anthony. I don't think he would ever do that. I don't think he would ever do that.
You'd have to self-publish, Jim.
Yeah. He'd have to self-publish like Steve Rosen. Hey, why not?
Yeah.
Give me a 1,000-page book, Michael. Even honestly, even if it's not any dirt, just tell me the history through your eyes, man. Doesn't have to. I would love to hear like some dirt, but I also want to hear like kind of like what John alluded to before, and I've said this to my buddies, in the past, is that only 4 guys on this planet lived that experience. I'm talking from like, in the beginning, from the early years, throw in Hagar and even Sharon in the end, right? They're part of the story. But only 4 guys lived that. Can you imagine, like, you're playing backyard parties, Michael Anthony's in the band, you're playing backyard parties, you're going through Gazzari's, you're going through, the whiskey, and then like you get signed and you do your album and you're thrust on this stage, you know, after Van Halen 1 blows up, you know. So only 4 guys lived that, man. You know?
Yeah,
And
you're right.
you know, there's some camaraderie in that, you know. And you know, I heard this interview just recently of it had to do with you know, this tribute tour, and I forget who it was. Maybe it was Eddie Trunk. Or somebody was interviewing. You know, it was Michael Anthony out of his words. I mean, out of his own mouth. You know, and he was saying that like he talks to Alex, and they just talk about the old times. And man, I love that. You know, I love that here's these 2 guys. Hey man, remember when we were in like, you know, Boise and like we, you know, hailed this cab and went over here, whatever the story is, right? I love that these guys are I love that they can talk, you know, like you know, Michael, you don't have to put Van Halen back on stage. I don't want that, but I love the idea that these guys, like I said, that have been through this experience that only 4 people have, are to some extent still friends, you know. And Dave bends over backwards in every interview to tell you that him and Alex laugh like pirates, you know. If I hope that's true, you know. I hope that's true. You know, I love the idea of these guys now at least being like, okay, we've been through this, and like, you know, that, you know, like, you know, Michael can call up Alex and just say, hey man, how you doing, you know.
Well, I hope that's the case, because I always got the impression that Mike had spoken to him a few times, maybe a handful of times, only 1 or 2 times since Eddie passed. Maybe I'm wrong, but I almost feel like Alex is kind of just, obviously Alex and Hagar aren't really speaking. You know, you've read the stories about that whole thing, where it's like he was, you know, enemy number 1. At least they said Roth was never about money with him. It was like a family fight with him. But the Hagar, that, you know, they feel like Ed felt like he was using Van Halen to further himself and his business ventures and stuff like that. And so I think and that might still remain with Alex, because I don't think Alex answers his calls or calls him back. I'm not sure, but you know, and the fact that Mike is buddies with Hagar, I think, you know, I don't know how much communication they had. So it's sad, like Jim's saying, it would be so cool if they could just, if they are reminiscing about these old times and things like that. But I don't know how much that happens, because it's always been dysfunctional, and it sounds like things are still very dysfunctional. They could never put together any kind of tribute to Eddie. It's been 2 years now almost, and you know, so nothing surprises me.
I think that's mainly because of Dave, and I think Dave's not well.
Right, that's the other cog in this wheel here, is
Yeah.
that there's stories going around that he's not well. But one other thing is that, you know, when I spoke to that guy Blair, and the Rolling Stone guy, you know, he said, and I don't think he said this anywhere else, but he did say that Eddie told him that he wanted to write a book. Him and Alex wanted to write a book.
Oh yeah.
And he said, for a guy who did, you know, as much partying and coke and drugs as Eddie, he goes, his memory was very sharp when it came to all the stuff that happened back in the old days and everything like that. And you know, obviously we're not going to get that book now, at least from Eddie. Who knows? Maybe someday Alex will, you know, because I'm sure, you know, they could set a lot of things straight, you know, in that book, because there are a few books out now that they'll have to answer to, you know, it could be a response to, basically, you know what I mean? That from his point of view, you know, Rosen's book, and this, what other book was out? Noel Monk's book, things like that. You know what I mean? So if there's anything in there that they're not happy about, Alex could always say something about it, you know, but I don't know if he ever will. But I thought that was kind of interesting that Eddie told him that that him and Alex wanted to write a book. That would have been pretty cool.
Well, let me ask you guys, like, what do you think about, like, okay, like I feel like the earliest kind of like strife with you know, within Van Halen and Hagar was Cabo Wabo, right? Like, what if Cabo Wabo worked out? You know what I mean? Because, you know, everybody knows the story, you know, it didn't work out. So Hagar bought him out, and then suddenly, I mean, I'm not saying suddenly like it was planned, but suddenly Cabo Wabo was a success, and like the brothers think they got conned, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'll say about that? You know, when I never understood it was this like severe. When Dave left, literally, I knew everybody left with him, but it was apparently it was like 70 or 50, 70 people from what I understand. Like everybody that worked for Van Halen basically left and went with Dave.
Yeah.
To the point where Hagar was saying that they were fielding phone calls at 5150. They were like the guys in the band, Eddie and Alex, were fielding phone calls. They didn't have a manager. They had nothing.
Yeah.
And so when Ed Loeffler took over, you know, Ed Loeffler was pretty well known. I guess, you know, he managed the Carpenters and they were huge, you know, remember Karen Carpenter? So, and he did right by them. And apparently, you know, like 1984, Van Halen spent so much money on that show that they made no money. That they broke even, I think, on the tour. That because they, you know, that big everything they took out, all the trucks and everything, full of lighting and everything on that tour. They broke even, but they never made money. And I know I've always gotten that feeling that was a sticking point. Eddie was very bitter about that, where bands like Bon Jovi would go out there and make, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars on tours. And, you know, and then the height of that was when Van Halen actually like opened up for Bon Jovi at Wembley in 1995, because Van Halen never toured Europe and Bon Jovi did. And John Bon Jovi was going around telling people that Van Halen is opening for me. You know what I mean? That's like, you know, it's like the American Led Zeppelin is opening for, you know, the pop Bon Jovi, you know what I mean? Throwaway pop music Bon Jovi. And, so I think they were very, very bitter about that. Eddie was, because they, you know, obviously they should have made a lot of money in the 80s. You know what I mean? Van Halen was huge. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so when Ed Loeffler came on, apparently he was Sammy's, obviously his manager, but that ended right there. It's like, I'm not your guy. Sammy, you're not just my guy anymore. I'm all of these guys equally. And he made apparently them a lot of money. Ed Loeffler made them a lot of money.
Yes.
And I think when things really started to hit the rails, like you said, with the Cabo Wabo thing, that was a bump there. But when Loeffler died in like 93, that's when I think the wheels just completely fell off of everything, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that was a moment when his death, if you look back, that's what really blew apart the band, because I think the Cabo Wabo thing was simmering with them. And then when he died, and then, you know, Alex's brother-in-law, what's his name, Ray Daniels, came in. I think that, and if you read, you know, Chris and Brad's book, I mean, what's his name? Ray Daniels came off sounding pretty okay to me. He didn't sound like.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Like before that, I thought Daniels was like but then I was like, he's doing a great job with Rush. Why is he the same Van Halen?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And then you hear all these stories, you know, you got the guy on the internet that said they asked him to be in the band. The guy, you know, I every time I hear
Malloy,
that,
you mean Mitch Malloy?
Yeah, I like, every time I hear that, I'm like, dude, no, you weren't in Van Halen. You came up there, and Eddie, in one of his moments, you know, of impulsive moments, says, yeah, you're in the band, man. You know what I mean? But you never were. He was never in the band, and he's got that song that he did that obviously Eddie gave him a DAT of an instrumental, a DAT tape of an instrumental, and the guy went in the studio and he dubbed his vocals over it and probably, you know, gave it back to them, but who knows if they even listened to it or whatever he did with it, you know? So it wasn't really like a collaboration. It was just a piece of music that Eddie handed him. Hey, see what you can do with this. And, you know, obviously we know it was a song that Gary Sharon worked on with them too afterwards. So, but I just think that, I think money was a huge sticking point with them, because I think that they realized that they could have made a lot more money in the 80s and they didn't. And then I think another important point for them is when they hired Irving Azoff, who was obviously the Eagles manager and things like that. And he made those guys get a lot of work, you know what I mean? And they just printed money, those guys, the Eagles. And apparently the 07 tour, the 2012 tour, and the 2015, apparently Van Halen made more money on those three tours than they made in their entire first 30 years or whatever of their career. I mean, they really cleaned up on those. They made big money on those tours, because I remember, Jimmy, in 97 with Sharon, I remember, how many times did we meet the band and just, it was like they were so accessible. It was like you couldn't believe it was like a big band like this worked like that. Free tickets. We're sitting with the family and in Madison Square Garden. Mike Post is sitting in front of me, the producer of the album. It was just like crazy but like a few short years later in 2004 when Irving took over. No. It was like, $450 for, a meet and greet or some stuff like that. So he really ran it and made them a lot of money. So, and I think that they always had bitterness about that. And obviously that bitterness spread in the band because they felt like, I'm writing all the songs. Why am I paying Michael Anthony, the same, why is he making the same amount of money as I'm making off the song that I wrote? You know what I mean? But, bands decide at the very beginning, all for one for all. It sounds great until money becomes an issue. You know what I mean? Like that. And obviously that drew a wedge between them with Michael Anthony too. It's always money, man. It's always about money. Every band, it's always about money, right?
Yes. I'm with you on that.
So,
I'm with you on that. It's like Twisted Sister where like Dee Snider, wrote all the music and then suddenly he's like, he's got a mansion and the other, 4 guys are like still living with literally still living with their mom, with their moms,
No, it's exactly true. It's, and obviously Michael Anthony invested his money well. Obviously he didn't have a drinking and drug problem, you know what I mean? So, he did pretty well for himself on there. And I think there's a lot of bitterness over that.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of bands have woken up and seen the songwriter living in a mansion while the other musicians are still, as you said, living at home. What's the songwriter living in a mansion? What's going on here?
Yeah. He's got a Porsche, and the other guys are driving like their beat up Volkswagen Rabbits in like 1984.
I always defended Michael Anthony though, because it's just like, Eddie would say, I'm doing all this work and these guys aren't doing anything. But Eddie, no offense, Ed, but I don't think you would have had it any other way. This is you loved being up there in your little studio in the middle of the night for hours, just working on stuff. That was what you did. That's what you loved to do. So, I mean, he could say that, this guy didn't pull his weight. He didn't bring any songs to the band. You wouldn't have recorded Michael Anthony's song, Eddie. You know what I mean? It would be like Sting with Stuart Copeland and Andy Summers songs. What did Sting do the one time, that one song, Behind My Camel, that Andy Summers won a Grammy for? It's like an instrumental. Sting refused to play bass on it, and apparently he took the tapes and he buried them in behind the studio. He dug a hole and buried them behind the studio, the master tapes for that. It's like, that's how it is. That
is how it is.
Yes.
And like, I don't know if I'd want it any other way. Like I want a Van Halen where the music's written by Ed. I mean, that's what I want.
Exactly.
And I think Hagar had that thought too. Like when he joined, he didn't write any music.
No.
No.
So I had people arguing with me on Facebook recently about that, saying Hagar wrote all of the songs. I go, no, man, he didn't. Eddie wrote all the music for all of those songs, and a lot of those melodies were dictated by what he was writing on the piano or whatever. And the same people that blame Eddie for them turning pop when Hagar joined the band, that had nothing to do with Hagar. Eddie was the one writing the music. You know what I mean? So it's like, you want to blame somebody, I go, blame him. You don't like it, I don't know what to tell you. I like it all, but blame him if you don't like it.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
Yeah, but hey, bottom line, it all came down to money, right? All of this, all these problems, with Roth, maybe not. I don't know. I shouldn't say that, It was different with him, the problems.
Yeah.
Guys, I heard that Roth. Yeah.
Sorry, Jim. No. You ask a question, brother.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that I heard Roth lost some money on that tattoo cream or whatever he was doing. Like he lost some
money on that.
Like it
really?
He put $7 million in, I think, from the 2007 tour.
It wasn't. I guess maybe because of COVID or something, like they weren't able to. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I heard, that he, it's no longer an operation that's viable. I think he pulled his money or whatever. It seemed like seemed like an odd thing, but he does.
Alan,
he does too.
Alan's right there in his comment too. There.
Mm-hmm.
Mike's. Eddie didn't really pay attention. But those, when you got people.
Yeah, I agree with Alan 100%. Yeah, it's like, yeah, he didn't write that, but like, Mike was a quarter of Van Halen. I mean, like, what I mean is that there couldn't have been another four guys in that. Like you were saying, even, we were talking about Billy Sheehan before. Even Billy Sheehan himself turned down that gig.
Yes, he knew. He knew. He's a smart guy. He knew.
Yeah, he knew that. Like, he was like, Van Halen's my favorite band. That
He didn't want to ruin that.
I don't want to, ruin it. Not ruin it, but like I want to say how it is. It's Van Halen. And that's what I mean. Like, like you couldn't have had any other four guys in that band, man. And that's what I mean about like
you couldn't have had anybody more perfect in that band. And Michael Anthony was the perfect
on their respective roles, man. Everybody had their job.
You got it. He had his role. He didn't want the spotlight. He just stood on. He was happy doing what he did. He wanted Eddie to have the spotlight, let the lead singer have the spotlight. He just wanted. He did his role. He sang those amazing harmony. The back, which were. When you hear that, when you hear Eddie's guitar, it's Van Halen. When you hear Mike's background vocals, it's Van Halen. You know what I mean? So it's
undeniable, man. Undeniable,
right?
And that's kind of like when my bass player left, and it's like, okay, we can find somebody that plays bass, but we also have to find somebody that can sing those backing vocals,
Yeah, right.
And it's just as important, man. It's just as important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just those four guys, and that's what I mean. It's like it's those four guys that just went through this journey and went through this story, and like they all lived it. Just those four guys. Enter Hagar later on or whatever, but the only thing that what I really didn't like about Hagar when he joined. And I'll tell you, like when I was a kid, when I in '85 when I heard that Dave left, I was like, I mean, I remember before that Dave was kind of still in the band with like California Girls, and I'm watching MTV, and I'm like, oh, you'd see like that, because like you'd hear like that beginning music for California Girls, and Dave on the beach or whatever, and I was like, oh man, it's so cool, right? I mean, I love Dave, right? And then Dave left. Oh, crap, man. And then you find out that Hagar's back, and I'll tell you, man, when I heard "Why Can't This Be Love" for the first time, I loved it, just like I love "Jump," And
I agree.
Thank you. And when Hagar joined, I loved 5150. I love that album. But like then they went out on tour, and they kind of they were like kind of bad mouthing Dave, which I can get. Like if you're Michael, Alex, and Ed, sure, bad mouth Dave. You went through that, kind of like that interview that I talked about before, where Michael Anthony wasn't happy, right? Dave put him through some shit. He wasn't a great guy, Dave, right? I mean, Dave's Dave. I mean, so I can understand it, but like it kind of rubbed me, even like in '86 when I was, how old was I in '86? 18. And even then when I, like I went and saw him at the Meadowlands, and like, Dave, I mean, like Sammy's kind of like, Dave Who with the Dave Who signs, and right. And I'm like, why is this guy getting involved? He didn't live through this. Dave didn't do anything to him, right? Am I right? Dave didn't do anything to Hagar.
It's true.
Like, why is he like jumping? Like the other three guys, I can understand. Like if Michael Anthony was raised some kind of banner that said Dave Who, I get it. But like here's Hagar, like first year in the band. Hey, he's like the old singer and stuff, and you're trying to like mark your territory. Even for a young kid like me at the time, it kind of just rubbed me the wrong way. Now, did it rub me the wrong way where I didn't like Hagar? No. I mean, I love that era too. I love that era.
I just think that they had a lot to prove. I mean, I think like we were just saying, when 50 people left with Dave, thinking that he's the reason they're successful. He's the reason they're on top of the rock charts. They're just like, because of Dave. So they all picked that. We're going with that guy. And for those three guys to be left alone, in that dumpy studio with burrito wrappers and Schlitz malt liquor cans all over the place, and cigarette ashtrays full of cigarettes in there. Like Hagar came in, and was just like, he had heard about how they were. He's like, oh my God.
I love that story. He said it was like a pigsty.
Yeah, exactly. And for them to go from that and in like 8 months time to hit #1, like the first week after that album, and without even a video out in the height of MTV, and then just go on tour and not on that one album basically, and a couple other songs that they threw in, Ain't Talking About Love, Panama, I Can't Drive 55, and One Way to Rock basically, and then just that whole album pretty much, and the one Zeppelin tune, there you go, and just every night you can feel the energy in that when you watch that video. Still to this day, you turn that on, it's like, man, these guys were just rarefied air. They were in there, and they had a lot to prove.
That New Haven show, because like you find other shows from that tour on YouTube, right? There's Montreal, there's Kansas City, I think there's Detroit from that tour, right? And just One Way to Rock, right? Every night Ed played different licks. It wasn't like he played the same licks every night. Okay, every night he played different licks, and yeah, they were cool. But man, there's just something, there's, and even like 5150, the song, right? There's just something about that night in New Haven, man, that is just magic. The other nights, like I've seen the other footage, it's good, But man, those licks that Eddie was playing, I mean, he was just on fire. And I guess most of that DVD is from the second night.
Yeah, most of it, yeah. And when they kick into One Way to Rock, that wasn't even the first song of the show. I mean, You Really Got Me was the opening number on that tour, and then One Way to Rock. And I mean, but when you see that, they were still, the energy just continued from that. It felt like that was an opening song when you turn that video on, when they just go right into it like that, that was just that was amazing.
Hey guys, before we end the show, I've got one question I want to ask you guys. So you guys are on the the East Coast of the United States, and Van Halen certainly were on the West Coast, and this divide between the East and the West, and in music history in America, you had the division with the jazz guys and then the rock and roll guys. So when you guys discovered Van Halen, was there a gulf between the fact that you guys were on the East Coast? What was there the separation? Were you guys like us here in New Zealand being pulled into this idea of Southern California? This idea, this cool thing coming from Southern California? Was that something that you guys experienced or bought into or were part of?
I've always had this, like, even as a little kid, I've always had this fascination with California. I'm not crazy about their politics, but I love California, right? And and that's, I think I touched on this in part one, where the very first song I heard was Beautiful Girls. I didn't even know it was Van Halen. I had to wait until the song was over. But I was like, what the hell is this? Right? And part of it is, it was a lot of it. Most of it was Eddie's playing, because like you never heard that. And the other part is like Dave with like the lyrics and like just singing about, toes in the sand, like beautiful girls, and and it was California, man. It was that song is California, right?
Okay.
That to me. And at the very end, Ed's doing Dave's doing the and then in between that, Ed's got these different licks he's throwing in the very end, like the ending solo thing, right? Just these crazy licks. There's like 8 bars of crazy licks. Dave does something, ooh ah, and Ed's got some solo, some licks he's playing. And but yeah, I mean, it was like sunshine. You know what I mean? And part of it was that I heard this during the summer. I heard that song during the summer, and it just affected me. Like, here's this. It was just fun, and I mean, I didn't know these guys were from California back then. When I didn't even know who they were. Right. I had to
Sure.
wait for the guy to tell me. Thank God he told me it was Van Halen. You know, but that one song, yeah. I mean, and I love that. Once I did know it was California, you know, it did. I mean, once I did know it was Van Halen, that whole California thing like came into play. I mean, they're playing backyard parties and just like the whole Sunset Strip thing, because at that point, you had other bands that were that, and you see the history of bands. Like when I was a kid around that time, I absolutely loved Rat. Still to this day, I love Rat. Like the first like the Robin Crosby years. I mean, my very first concert was Bon Jovi opening up for Rat in New Haven. So, but like you could see that like these guys, they were basically, once I became aware of who Van Halen was, you could see other bands were kind of taking that blueprint, and and I loved it. I loved Motley Crue, I loved Rat, I loved Dokken. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And all those bands were from California. And to me, it was like I had, in the '80s, I had this idea, especially because of institutions like GIT. My buddies went out there, right? And they were telling me stories of like how, like, not so much in real life, but like they were telling me stories about guitar stores everywhere. And I love guitars. I mean, obviously, right? And I kind of had this idea that like people were just walking down the street with guitars in their hands, just like, like Charvel. All I wanted was a Charvel, man. Okay. Me and
Hi, Craig.
Gibson, we talk about this all the time about like Charvels, and I just felt like California, LA. You're walking down the street, everybody's got like long hair, they're walking down the street unplugged with Charvels in their hands. I swear, that's the idea I had. So yeah, I mean, that's part of the attraction. That's why, I don't like labeling Van Halen like a party band. I think they're way more than that. But man, there was a party thing to them, and well deserved, well deserved. So yeah.
Awesome. Hey, Craig,
John,
good to see you.
I-
Andrew, Conks, and the Greek. What's up?
Oh, stop, man. Oh, the maestro. I call him the maestro, man.
He's got to come on and do a show with us. Craig's got to come on, man.
No.
He's got to come on.
He wrote Jimmy Plays Anchors, which means that I love heavy guitars.
Yeah,
He knows that.
he does.
I love heavy guitars. Yeah. Anyway, good to have you on here, Maestro. Good to see you, man.
Definitely.
Awesome.
So yeah, California, man. That's part.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel the same way as Jimmy. I was always fascinated with California when I was a kid. It didn't feel unnatural though, because I mean, even though the United States is huge, I kind of feel like, especially New York and LA are, two of the most important cities in the country. So, New York, what's going on in LA and vice versa. So, and to your point, Jimmy, it's true. It's funny because the first time I went to LA, the morning after I got there, I went to Guitar Center on Sunset, just opened at 9:00 in the morning. And there was the guy, one of those Nelson brothers, the Ricky Nelson's kids, in guitars. That we were the only people in there, and he's sitting there playing a guitar or a bass in there. It's like, wow, it is true. It's just like everywhere you go, man. Yeah, exactly, right. But
and we also had we had MTV, so MTV was bringing you that lifestyle too.
Exactly. It didn't feel unnatural, even though East Coast. Like I was born in the Bronx, and I grew up, in the suburbs right outside the city my whole life, and it's just it didn't feel foreign at all. It's weird. That's one thing about this country. It's just like as big as it is, it didn't feel like that. But at the same time, real quick, like anybody else, like Craig, who's in the chat right there. Kiss was the first band, and Kiss always led into Van Halen. That's how it is. You start out with Kiss, you take your training wheels off, and you go to Van Halen. And Craig will tell you the same exact thing. I know he was the same way. Kiss was the primer for Van Halen. And I remember when I first picked up the album, Van Halen 1, and I saw Gene Simmons, Special Thanks on the back to Gene Simmons. I was like, okay, these guys are cool. This is my next band, because of that. So.
How cool. Okay, so here's a question, right? Have you guys seen that alternate cover for Van Halen 1 where it's just them kind of standing around and like Alex is in the foreground and stuff, as opposed to the original cover? I mean, is there anything more iconic?
Sick.
I mean, I can't picture that album being any other way. You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what?
the music stays the same, obviously, but like, I mean, one's like, okay, you know, I don't like the one I don't like. The other one is just like the most iconic album cover ever. I mean,
Yeah,
what a great, you know, cover.
the photographer of that album, I read an interview with him recently, and he was talking about each photo of the guys on the album. It was kind of interesting, his take on it. Like, Alex is a blur because he's, you know, it's just like, you know, it's all
yeah,
blurred.
yeah. I heard that.
Yeah, and the colors that on each of them, the colors of the lights they had on them and stuff like that. You know, it was kind of
It's
cool.
funny, like Conks you froze there for a minute, and like you were just like the cover. Anyway,
blurred.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely, man. And it's funny because 1984, the story of the cover of that album too. I mean, to me, that one is like that.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
I love that one. That's my favorite one. That
Me too.
painting is just like, and
too.
that artist that did that, they were looking through a portfolio. They wanted her to do like chrome women, like naked women or something.
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
I mean, that would have been like lame. You know what I mean? That baby picture. It was just like, it's just amazing how things happen. You know how
I
things
remember
just happen.
walking past, like I was in the mall, like 84. There's a mall obviously near my house, and like there was a music store, Graf Wadman, and you'd walk by there, and right in the front is just like stacks of 1984, and it's just, I mean, you know, what a memory, you know.
I still have the giant poster from the record stores. It says Van Halen is watching you. It's like,
yes, watching you. Yes, I know
the album cover. It's kind of tattered, but I have it saved in like I want to put it in a frame at some point. But it's like 4 feet long by this, and it's got the baby and the cloud sitting there with the shirt that says Van Halen is watching you.
So great, man.
Yeah,
so great.
So awesome.
Good times.
Awesome, guys. It's been wonderful hanging out with Jim and John.
I wanted to say one more thing.
Sure, brother.
Andrew and I were talking about this, and you know, Craig's on here too. So we were talking about like Con being up on, like, you know, in November on the 7th or whatever, and like maybe we can maybe work something with Andrew. I don't know, like
definitely
kind of feed or something, you know, like for
I
don't know, for a few minutes or something. We can talk about that off the air.
Definitely. I talked to Joe Suma about it too, and when Andrew Andrew mentioned it to me a while ago too. So yeah, definitely, we got to do that. You know, definitely. It's a big day. I think it's going to be a big one this year too, because COVID is finally, hopefully, in the rearview mirror now, and you know, it's going to be more of the regulars are going to be back, and you know, I think it's going to be a special one this year. It's going to be good.
Awesome. Look, we'd love to be associated in any way with it, because, like we were saying in the green room, guys, you know, the EVH Con is developing its own reputation, its own thing. It's got its own vibe going. You know, certainly it's resonating within the Van Halen community, not only just nationally with you guys in the States, but internationally. So, you know, all credit to you guys over the years for pushing that. You know, Craig's been there. I've seen the videos of Craig there. Dave Nesdell over the years, you, John, you, Jim, you know, lots of guys have been involved in it. So, you know, if you guys can continue that and keep the flag flying.
Yeah, we had Kurt last year, I think, from like, you know, Seattle or whatever.
Yeah. So I would love to do something with you guys. Jim and John, will you come back for part 3?
Oh, absolutely, man.
Yeah, of course.
Come. You know, bring Craig with you. Bring Craig to the party.
Craig, man. There you go. Craig. Get Alan on here too, man. That'd be great.
You know, definitely. Let's have a party, and we'll work out some subjects. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, we never get moments of silence on this channel, and certainly not on the Van Halen shows we do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I said. Like, if the subject's Van Halen, I can't shut up.
Yeah, we're into it.
Same here.
Look, guys, I'm going to be back in about 4 hours' time with the 3rd show today. We're going to be ranking the tracks. Come taste the band. We've got a guest host coming on with us, a guy called Zach Edris. Come taste the band is the version of Deep Purple with
Coverdale,
who was
right?
the guitar? Who was?
You're talking about Bolin?
Bolin.
Yeah.
Gosh, all these names in my head. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like the album, so we're going to be looking forward to that. John and I and Jim, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching a replay, we'll work out a date when we come back and do part 3. You know, I love the fact that we've got this opportunity to hang out with, you know, Van Halen fans. Jim, you might even, and John, you might even have received copies of your book. When you do, we're not talking about it. We're not doing. You can just say you've got copies of your book, and that's it.
Oh, I love that idea. I love that idea. You know, get back up here and talk about it. Yeah, I love that idea.
But once we certainly, you know, all get together and we've read the book, I would love to digest it and you know, do a fuller show with you guys, and I'm sure other people love to hear John and Jim's impressions of the book, because after all, guys, we're just fans. We're just fans. We're just getting together. None of us are experts. We're just getting together, hanging out, talking about Van Halen.
Yeah. I want to thank everybody in the chat. You know, Maestro, thanks for being here. Alan, great to see you. Everybody else, thank you for like tuning in. I mean, you know, thanks a lot for even caring. You know, thanks a lot. Yeah. And Andrew, we'll be in touch with you. We'll talk about this con thing and how we can set it up. We'll be in touch. We still got some time.
Yeah. And while Craig's here, I just want to make a point. I think I did a show recently, and we were talking about chips falling not far from the block. And I made a reference to a show, Craig, about you and your son. Because you're, I think it was on a couple of shows ago. If you follow Craig on social media, he's got his son, and his son is just killing it too.
Not only that, but his kid is like killing it on like the guitar builds too.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he is.
I told Craig, I love that pattern that the kid came up with. Yeah, I love that pattern.
The kid's up at 3 o'clock in the morning in his room with his guitar, you know, and getting caught by his mother and father. Hey, kid, go to bed. You know?
Well, sounds like me. Like I told you, my old man, he would lock up my guitar because I wasn't doing so good in this one class. Sounds like me.
Awesome. You guys, we'll work out a date, and I'm going to let you go. If you guys can get Craig on here, because I've tried a couple of times.
Absolutely.
And
don't worry about that.
And he's been busy, so let's get him on. We're out of here.
We'll get him.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to say thank you very much, guys, for hanging out. Do you want to say a couple of words, Jim, and then John, and then we'll hit the button?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for, tuning in. It's great to see, like our friends on this thing. And, I'll see most of these guys, probably maybe before con or at con. And, it's like I was telling Andrew in the green room, man, it's just amazing how like we all live within like, at the most an hour or two from each other, there's like this whole community around like this tri-state area, and it's a big part of like, the national community of what is, Van Halen fans and stuff. And it's, I'm happy to be a part of it. And like, I'm happy that people care to even, tune in and watch this and hear my shitty opinions.
I second that. What exactly what he said.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks guys. Thanks everybody.
Right. We're out of here.
All right, guys.
Bye-bye.